All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Sifting Reclaiming Authenticity. Today marks episode... I don't know why I said that. Today is episode number 72, which I just realized it was 72 because I put in all of my notes here 73. So it's not that. It's 72. And I am Jonah, as always. It's been a little while since we've been here chatting with you guys and with each other. Well, we've spoken since last episode. I should make that now.
Barely, only for business.
Yeah, only for business agreements have we had to speak. So, Lindsay, since I haven't talked to you apparently in a while, how are you doing today?
Fine.
I should say this is Lindsay, by the way.
A little cold.
A little cold? Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what's going on, to be honest. It's we're recording this as we go into like the back half of April. I guess we technically are in the back half of April. But very odd. It's such a strange time of year because sometimes it's cold and sometimes it's warm, and you just don't know what's going on ever. Like the one day last week, I left the house in the morning with my heat on, and by the time I left work, I had to blast the AC because it was so hot outside. So it's just, I don't know what's happening. But your poor allergies have not been enjoying themselves, right?
Allergies don't enjoy themselves.
They don't at all. It's weird. I'm always cold, and I had a hoodie on a few minutes ago, but I was warm sitting here. I think it's because of we have like multiple light sources happening right now, so it might be that. I mean, you might get warm in this thick jacket that you have. You have a dog shirt on underneath that.
Mm-hmm. Puppy
Love. It's a great brand. I'm a big fan of Puppy Love. That makes clapping her approval too. We were just... we'll get into it, but we were just joking that it's so funny. Nutmeg sits over here on the bed, and she usually takes a nap while we're doing this from like our guest room. And I just constantly think that Nutmeg is sitting over there like a heckler, where she is telling me internally to shut up and to get on with it and to wrap it up. Yeah, she's definitely doing that. It's so funny. It's like the little characters from the Muppets. That's how I imagine Toffee and Nutmeg are. Nutmeg more so.
What if we hate everything?
Yeah, what if we hate everything? All right. Well, as I said, this is episode number 73. 72. You can listen to us. Obviously, you know this if you're listening to this. But you can listen to us on YouTube. We're on Spotify. For a lot of people, we're probably just in your ear as you are washing dishes or driving your car or, I don't know, folding laundry or whatever sort of chore that you do. So yeah,
that's... Just say we're in their ear. It makes us sound like creeps.
Well, it's, you know what, it's the truth. Like, we are. Our presence is there, our voices. Anyway.
Hello.
Yeah, you can find us on social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And we usually share different kind of material on there, different graphics that Lindsay makes. No AI is used in the making of that. I've never said that before. It's like, in our new age of AI, you have to make more and more disclaimers that something is not created, or it is created with AI. So all of those are AI-free. And Lindsay makes them, and they all look absolutely wonderful. And so she does a great job with that. So check them out. Yeah, we do episodes a little infrequently, more infrequently than we used to. We show up every several weeks or so and have a new topic. We have a topic today that I think is super cool and should have some really great discussion. I've got my water ready in case I'm talking a lot. So I always have my water. But let's see, what else? Am I missing anything? I don't think so. No, I think that's all of the kind of intro stuff. Oh yeah, if you like us, give us a like, a comment, a share. All of that sort of stuff is awesome. We'd love to discuss like episode topics and things like that with people when they comment and, agree or disagree. That's completely fine. I think that's great. And everybody learns and everybody grows as, we discuss things and we discuss topics. As we talk about this today, there might be an angle to this that, I don't see or Lindsay doesn't see and someone else does that we find really interesting and that is super beneficial. So that's great. Other than that, I think that is everything. So Lindsay, have we done anything fun or interesting the past several weeks?
Our Studio Ghibli show.
Oh yeah, we did do that last week. So we saw the music of Studio Ghibli on Tuesday night last week by the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. We love to go there, I think, as we've said before. But this show was absolutely awesome. It was great. I think we're both pretty big fans of the movies. They're all really great. This show had... Some people have no idea what this is, and that's okay. They had music from 4 of the movies. My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Howl's Moving Castle, and my personal favorite, Spirited Away. All were just absolutely amazing performances of all of the various pieces from the music. If you don't know what Studio Ghibli is, I don't blame you, but they make Japanese animated feature films. There's probably like 20 of them or so. That might be a bit much. Maybe 15 to 20 of these movies. And they're just absolutely wonderful. I think I've liked every single one that I've seen. If the movie itself isn't your thing, I highly recommend listening to the music because the music is just absolutely, heavenly is the best word I can think of it. It just takes you to another place, man. And I like that composer a lot. So we had a great time. Lindsay, you're a big fan of My Neighbor Totoro. That's your favorite one? Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I think that's a lot of people's favorite. If we try to explain the movie, it's a total trip. Just go and watch it. A beautiful little movie, though, about... Well, I'll just say children who are going through a hard situation in, a new season in their life, and they kind of are coming up with a way to cope with it. It's cool. It's very, very cool. But their movies are great because, they're very enjoyable for children. They're great kids movies. I think that they're far better than the Disney movies. They're kind of analogous to Disney. But I think they're far better for kids to watch. But as you get older, and as you watch them as an adult, you realize just how powerful they are, and they resonate with you more, I think, as an adult than they would as a kid. So anyway, I recommend it. If you're a parent and you're looking for good stuff for your kid to watch, let them watch My Neighbor Totoro. And they'll fall in love with it. I guarantee you they will love the movie. And you'll like it too. Probably. If you can get over some of the weirdness, it's a really, beautiful little film. Anything else that I'm missing? I don't think so. Been to the zoo. We did that. Did you know there was a fight at the Cincinnati Zoo the day before we went?
Something about it. A kid got hit with a chair or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this happened the day before we went last time. So, that was great.
Not the fight.
The fight, yeah, the zoo. It's so... we saw the cutest little baby gorilla at the zoo. His name is Maboka Joe. And he's just absolutely a wonderful little delight. He is. It was so funny. His mom, Gladys, is just walking around, and the way that, like, gorillas carry their babies is so funny because she was just, doing the gorilla thing, walking around. And she's got him, like, under her, what do you call it? Like her chest, and just kind of carrying him with one hand, and he's dangling there. Super cute. But, yeah, that was awesome to see. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. We've had like a long year already, honestly, and it's only the end of April. We've had a lot going on this year with just house and cars and all sorts of fun stuff that comes with owning things. So yeah, it's been great. But we're doing awesome. We're doing great. All right. So today we're back with episode 72. And today we're talking about biblical masculinity. Biblical masculinity. For anybody who didn't catch it the first time. Yeah, I think this is a really fascinating topic in today's world that we live in, because we are seeing a lot of really what I think is worrying trends rising up in men in our society today. And as a male, I can attest and confirm that a lot of those trends sadly are true, and a lot of the guys that I just, it's just something that I know is true, being a guy, and knowing how various men around my age feel, but not only, my age, but younger and older than me. Did you know about this? There's this rising thing that's happening in people that are around the age of like 23 to 25 called a quarter life crisis. Have you heard about this? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that age apparently are what they consider, they would consider themselves to be going through a crisis, similar to what you might see in a midlife crisis, where people get to the age of 40-ish to 45, and they start having feelings of not having done enough, that their life is halfway over, that they only have so much time left, that they're going on the other side of the hourglass, and people kind of have this realization of time starting to run out. People are experiencing something similar in like their mid-20s, and it's just shocking to me, because I think to myself, don't say it, I think to myself that it's an inside joke. You're 25 years old, you shouldn't be so frustrated about your life, and you shouldn't be having what you would consider to be a crisis over if it's not doing enough. Maybe you have friends that are married, or they have a house or whatever, and feeling like you're behind in life. And I'm noticing that is true in a lot of young men around that age. And we're going to talk about several of the things that I think are happening, and a couple of the reasons, and also kind of where I think that comes from. But we're seeing men really suffering with a lot. We have a male loneliness crisis happening right now. That is 1,000% true, where more and more men just kind of are reporting that they feel alone, that they feel unseen, that they feel like they are a failure. And those numbers are really high of people that would say that. And, they feel like they don't have a lot of friendships. The friendships that they do have feel very surface level. They don't feel meaningful. So what a lot of guys report feeling is that they have friends, but they don't consider them to be good friends or meaningful friendships, which makes them feel even more lonely. So there's that. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is a loneliness epidemic. There's a really there's a really worrying trend, I think, of kind of self-improvement that a lot of guys are following. And I think there's a difference between wanting to improve yourself, but also following a lot of the modern day kind of self-improvement tactics where you wake up at 4 a.m., take an ice bath, do push-ups, and then read for 2 hours a self-help book. That stuff is becoming increasingly more popular, especially with like content creators online. And that is kind of worrisome to me because nothing in that, as we'll talk about, nothing in that indicates being a strong or a healthy man really at all. It's just a grind mentality that enables you to try to get ahead. So we're seeing addiction happen in a lot of guys, whether it be alcohol or drugs, but it can also be other things. Some men are addicted to work. Men are addicted to gaming or just all sorts of things that are kind of ensnaring them. And we're just seeing a lot of things rise up. And I think this stuff has always been there, but it's not been as prevalent and it's not been as talked about, I think, as it is now. And, again, we'll talk about it soon, but it used to be very taboo to talk about, how you feel and to talk about things that you're going through and things that you feel. Whereas now that is becoming a little more common. That's becoming much less taboo, thankfully. It's something that's now encouraged. And so because more and more men feel comfortable talking about it, we know that these things are actually true. Depression is definitely on a rise. Anxiety is on a rise. So, and I also want to say this, I feel like none of what we're going to talk about negates what women also go through. Because on the other side, women are also fighting battles. They might look different. Some might be similar. But I think it's important to note that while this episode is focused on men, there's definitely a lot happening with women too that also we need to be aware of, and we need to address and we need to have knowledge about as well. I think everybody is just kind of suffering all the time from something, and there are things happening, emotional, mental, physical things, psychological things that are happening with each gender at different points in their life. And so I think that's just important to point out. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of how our culture defines manhood in our modern era. And I think a lot of these examples that we're going to talk about are the reason why we see so many men kind of suffering in their mental health, physical health, relationships. That's another thing too. A lot of men are reporting that they have poor relationships, whether with a spouse, with their family, with their friends. They don't have good relationships, and I think a lot of that comes down to the ability or their inability to be vulnerable, to talk about how they feel, to talk about what they want and what they don't want, which we'll talk about. So, and then after we kind of talk about all that, we're going to give like a biblical antidote to all of these issues. How is manhood and masculinity kind of shown to us in the scriptures? And then how can people try to take hold of that to have a better understanding of what healthy masculinity looks like? And so, how does our culture define manhood in our modern era? How does it define masculinity? Well, I think that it's so interesting because recently, rest in peace to the iconic Chuck Norris. So he's temporarily fighting death, and he'll be back. But that was bad. But it's so funny because It's not funny. Chuck Norris, passed away, and he was kind of an icon for internet culture. If you're listening to it and you're older, maybe Gen X or Boomer age, you might not be aware of just how much of a meme figure that Chuck Norris is on the internet. And he kind of became this this internet sensation in a way where people kind of looked at him like he could do anything, and that he was as strong as anybody could be. And he is just one of several figures that I think came out of like the mid to late 1900s that...
Why would you say it like that?
What?
That makes me feel ancient. I come from the late 1900s.
The very end of the 1900s, right?
What about 1990s? Gosh, 80s and 90s?
You know exactly. It's just the way I said it.
The late 1900s.
The way I said it.
I feel like I'm about to turn into a pile of dust right now.
I'm also from that era. I don't feel like I'm going to turn into dust. Anyway, Chuck, I'll say it again, from the mid to late 1900s, there were figures like Chuck Norris that kind of rose up as an icon, like a man's icon, right? You have people like John Wayne or Arnold Schwarzenegger, men that I think were prominently displayed in...
Sorry, we have a puppy dream happening.
That is quite a puppy dream. Oh, that's so cute. So there were these icons of masculinity, I think, in our media in that time period, and I think of somebody even prior to that, like Teddy Roosevelt, right? Who, there were all these crazy facts about how tough he was and how crazy he was, and just how much of like what we would call a man's man he was. And so a lot of these figures became icons, and they became super, super popular. And there are various reasons why I think we're in our masculinity crisis now. But this is one that I just kind of honed in on. I looked at, a lot of these dominant male figures from either movies or television shows. These guys who could do anything, right? They were strong as an ox. They could fight anybody. Somebody like Rocky, right? Which that may actually not be the best example, because the Rocky movies do show a decent amount of vulnerability. But, that image of like, I think it's Muhammad Ali, the famous picture of him over top of his opponent, and he's like got the fist thing going on.
Fist thing.
Yes, yeah. So images like that have really stuck in our culture and stuck in our mind. It's so interesting because I think of like, if you've ever seen the movie Barbie that came out a couple years ago, Ryan Gosling in that movie is perfectly content just being himself until he gets exposed to a lot of these like images of these guys who are super masculine, and you see them like leading the West, a lot of these Western heroes, and riding horses, and like all of these super when he sees that, something just like clicks in him, and he says, I need to be that. And
the world is ruled by men and horses.
That's right. It's always some dude on a horse, I heard an author say one time. Yeah, I think something happened when we saw a lot of those figures, kind of as a culture, and it really went to defining what modern masculinity would look like, and that's a couple of things. I wrote down here a lack of emotion. We don't want to share how we really feel, because sharing feelings means we are weak. We should just suck it up and deal with it ourselves rather than appear vulnerable to others, right? So that's a big thing in modern masculinity. That's the number one thing I can think of that is just a thing that men believe that's killing them. A lack of emotion, not being able to share how you feel. Because we've always been told that sharing how you feel is weak. You cannot appear weak, whatever you do. I wrote down here toughness. Now, I mean toughness in a more negative term. It can't really be defined like coldness or, stoicism, but there is like a layer of grit that just kind of is over us. Something that just holds us back from exposing our hearts to others. Just this general toughness that we need to appear tough, and we can't appear, soft at all. I wrote down here a work-first mindset. And what I mean by that is my value comes from what I do instead of who I am. This is absolutely huge in masculinity today. And it's such an erroneous error that it's killing a lot of modern men because they are exhausting themselves. They are working themselves so hard trying to prove their worth to their families, to the world. They feel like they have to earn their keep. They have to earn their place in the spaces that they inhabit. So even if you're a guy and you are married and you have a family, even if you have a good job, you feel like you have to continue to work yourself to death to kind of earn the respect, earn the love, earn the trust of the people around you. And you should want to keep that, but at the same time, that's a work-first mindset where you are starting to believe that your value comes from the things that you do rather than the things, or rather than who you are. And I think this is so relevant now because men are praised. I see this all the time. Men are praised because of what they do. Like, there are guys that can build anything, right? They're super talented and gifted to build things, and those guys are praised for how they provide value to either their workplace or their family. And the more that you can do, the higher your value is in our society. So if you are a man who just knows how to, let's say, knows how to cook, right? That's valuable. But if you don't also know how to woodwork, and you don't know how to be a gardener, and you don't know how to raise children in a great and healthy, positive way, your value's not very high. So the more that you can do, the more valuable that you are. This is it's an unbelievable lie that exists in our world today, where the more that you know how to do, the more valuable you are seen in our world. And the less you know how to do, the less valuable you are made to feel. Even though there are some men that are really great and amazing at one particular thing, even at the expense of other things, it doesn't make them any less valuable as a human being. It doesn't make them any less valuable as a person, or as a partner, or as an employee in any way. There are some men that have skills that are not seen as valuable as others. Like, there are some guys who are really great thinkers, and they are very articulate, and they know how to articulate thought. They know how to teach things very well, maybe a subject like math, science. Some guys are really versed in like philosophy or theology, and they are really gifted at bringing a lot of these things forth, but those things are not seen as super valuable in our society. So these guys are made to feel lower. And that's an unfortunate thing that exists. I also put down here grind mentality. I kind of mentioned it earlier. That goes hand in hand with the work mindset, which means if you aren't always doing something, always improving, I kind of wrote down here like a leveling up syndrome. You're doing it all wrong, and you are looked down upon if that's not your mindset. I think the problem in this is that this is an illusion of progress. It's possible to have a grind mentality and you're not actually growing in any way. You're not doing anything valuable that is improving you as a human being, improving you as a person, as a spouse, as a Christian, as an employee. And I think that's really harmful. But again, a lot of guys have kind of embraced that mindset where you see people on Instagram doing a cold plunge at 4 a.m. and then reading a self-help book for 2 hours, and then they go to work, and it's like, dude, how am I even going to work? Like, I'm exhausted. When am I going to sleep? When am I going to... It's just not, it's not realistic, you know? All right, so I talked for a long time, and we're about to go into how we see manhood in the Bible. So we have all these ways in which it's defined in our culture, but how do we see it in the Scripture? Lindsay, do you have any points that you want to add on anything I just said while I take a drink break?
I guess I would just say there's kind of this verbiage going around about specifically Gen Z men, I think, are being called the most traditionally, like the most traditional generation in a long time. I think that is terrible verbiage to use. It's not traditional thinking that we're seeing here. It's like quite toxic and dangerous mindsets. And I think labeling that as traditional is probably for some kind of agenda, obviously. But it's really just not helpful to label a lot of these things that we're seeing as what they are, which is dangerous and not normal ways for men to be interacting with their world. Yeah, and I mean, there have been countless studies on where these things come from and how they've sort of developed into the loneliness and stuff like, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, the looks maxing community.
What is that? What is that? Does that term mean?
It's just this idea of, you know, being a, like, making yourself a high value man to attract high value females, which, using the term female, like, gag me. And I mean, like, they take it as far as, like, hitting their face with a hammer to give themselves, like, they've decided that this will help give them, like, a more chiseled jawline.
Yes, that is how that works, absolutely.
So they'll look more masculine, and they end up, like, cracking bones in their face and stuff.
You physically chisel yourself.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But just these strange concepts that we've turned manhood into. And I just think it's dangerous to label them as traditional, because traditional kind of gives it this idea that it used to be normal. This has never been normal. And it's toxic and dangerous and shouldn't be labeled as anything but.
Yeah, 100%. I had no idea that was a thing. I have heard that term before, but the fact that someone would hit themselves with a hammer to be more attractive, it's like, dude, that your broken nose makes you more attractive? Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, they're like, if I can just make myself attractive enough, I can attract high value females. But they have like the worst personalities because of these ideas that I just have to look the right way. When it's like, I heard of a study recently that said that women actually think that 80% of men are less than average attractiveness. And so, like, it's a known fact that if women think your personality is attractive, they find you more physically attractive. So, I mean, what these people are trying to do is just backwards.
Yeah.
Rather than working on themselves, they're like, if I can just get masculine looking enough, that's all I need.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I should have done that. I think maybe we would have started dating sooner if I had done that. If I had not looks maxer.
If you would hit yourself in the face with a hammer.
Yeah.
A few times.
Okay. So how do we actually see manhood in the Bible then? If we have all of these awful examples around us and we have all of these toxic thoughts, we have to have something going in that is good, right? And we have to have something going in that is actually healthy, that's actually Christ-like, that is given by God for men of all ages and all times. And I think we see a couple of things that I want to point out, and these are, I think, in direct contrast to a lot of the things that we just talked about. So I put down here, manhood in the Bible is being in touch with the inner world for the benefit of themselves and for God's kingdom. And by being in touch with the inner world, all I'm saying by that is being emotionally intelligent and working on your heart, your spirit, and knowing what's happening in there, and that being a core focus of who you are and your life. And a lot of how that's accomplished in Christianity is through prayer. I thought about Daniel, where he lived within a time that was deeply distressing as they were in exile. A time of great stress, of great torment, and a lot of pressure that was happening on his people. And if you look at Daniel 6:10, we have proof that Daniel would pray 3 times a day. He would open his windows, and 3 times a day he would offer prayer multiple times. And I feel like what men today do when they get in stressful times or when they get in frustrating situations, obviously we don't experience, thankfully, what Daniel experienced as far as his captivity, but we can experience, emotional captivity in some way. Maybe something happens to us. Maybe our wife is sick, or she's going through difficult times, or maybe we are on the verge of a job loss, or something's happening with our kid, or various things that can happen as we live our lives. What I feel like a lot of men today do is they just complain about it. And it's like they do everything except pray. They will go online and they will talk bad about this business or that business, or They will get angry. They'll get frustrated. They will start to take that out, or they will numb themselves, right? They will drink themselves to death to try and just forget about the pain that they feel, to forget about the things that are happening in their life. And what these all are, ultimately, at the end of the day, are just kind of like coping mechanisms to get through the difficult times that you find yourself in. And what the scripture presents as the antidote to that is prayer, right? Being connected to God, where Daniel, in the midst of his captivity, he could have, raged out on all of these people that were, that had taken him captive, that had taken his friends and his family. And a lot of modern men would probably do that. But his solution was not, to throw fire on the fire. His solution was to just ignore the fire completely, ignore trying to get involved in it, and just pray and just give the situation and give his heart over to God, because he didn't want his heart to be contaminated by the things that were happening around him. And that doesn't mean that, in our modern day we aren't engaged and we're not taking part in the things that are going on in our lives that are challenging, that are difficult. It's not what that means at all, but that means that these situations aren't going to control us on an emotional level. Instead of allowing our emotions to take over, or instead of trying to numb everything out, we are, giving it to God and allowing him to just kind of move in our life. What did I put down here? So I put prayer is a grounding practice because it connects you to God, and it also reminds you of who you are in him. And I feel like the thing that you need and I feel like, by the way, I'm the one that's like taking this advice for myself. As I was writing this, I was writing what I feel would be good advice to me when I go through these things. So in no way am I the perfect example of this by any means, not even close. But I feel like it is important truth for all men, really everybody. When you are going through challenges and you're going through times that feel unstable and times that are, stretching you, and times that are pushing you, and you're in a place where you really don't want to be, what you need at that time is something that is grounding, something that is consistent, something that you can rely on. And oftentimes the number one thing is prayer, because it connects you to God and it reminds you of who you are in him. And the two things that we don't want to lose are our image of God and the image of ourselves. We don't want to forget who God is in the middle of what we're going through. And we also don't want to lose who we are in the middle of what we're going through, because that can easily happen as well. And we don't want to become tainted by the things that are happening. We don't want to become hardened. And prayer keeps that at the forefront of our spirits, whatever we're going through. So to me, when I see masculinity in the Bible, one of the top things that I see is being in touch with your inner world for the benefit of yourself and for God's kingdom. And that usually happens through prayer. I also wrote down here how we see masculinity in the Bible is awareness and acceptance of weaknesses. And obviously the first person I think of here is Paul in the New Testament. He is a man who was keenly aware of his own weakness. Not only that, but he considered it a good thing to not have it all together. He thought that it was actually admirable that he was not perfect in every way, that he had flaws. And in 2 Corinthians 12, he talks about why he thinks that's such a good thing. It's a famous passage of scripture, but I really like the way that the ESV translation in particular says this. It says, God is speaking to him, and he says, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then," and I love the way that this is translated, it says, "I am content with weaknesses. For when I am weak, then I am strong." I think it's really telling that Paul not only says that he has weaknesses, but saying he's actually content having them. And he recognizes them, and he accepts them. I think that we need to become, as men, more comfortable with weakness. We are not always going to be the strongest person. We are not always going to be the one who knows everything. And we have to be okay with that. There is nothing more annoying and there's nothing more irritating than a guy who thinks that he knows all things, right? It's the kid from Polar Express, like the yellow pajama kid. Like, you want to know what's a nightmare? That kid is an adult, right?
I really you reference that kid like every third episode.
I do, yes. He's...
Your hate for him runs deep.
Well, he teaches us a lot, does he not? Like, that, his archetype speaks to us because there's people like that. What is Tom Hanks write on his ticket at the end? I think it's humility. I could be wrong, but I think he gets that as his ticket.
The disdain that you have for that cartoon character.
Well, my toxic trait is that I like him. I just think that he's misguided. That's all. But like that person, we know that person, right? You've seen that person before who thinks that they know everything, and they always want to offer advice, and they always want to tell you how to do this and tell you how to do that. And the thing is, it's usually wrong. Like, they don't realize just how wrong they are. And that's the interesting paradox, is that the more right that you think you are, it probably means that you, in reality, are very far off the mark. But if the more accepting you are that you don't know everything, that you do have weaknesses, and that you have limits, the closer you are to being in line, I think, with a biblical worldview. And the closer you are, I think, to having a positive influence in your own life and others. And I think that more men have to be willing to say things like, I don't know have the answer on that. More men need to be willing to say, hey, you know what, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. Where I feel like in our world today, you have to be good at everything you do, because that's how you're valuable. And that is so against what I think the scripture teaches, especially in the life of Paul. In this passage, right before these verses, it's talking about the thorn in his flesh, right? Where he's begging for it to be taken away. And there's a lot of discussion about what that thorn is. And ultimately, I just think we can label it as, a weakness of some sort that he had. We are probably never going to know what it was. And we don't need to. That's not the point of the passage. The point is the Spirit coming to him and saying, you need to be comfortable in my grace. You need to accept that because you have weaknesses, that's the proof of my power in you. Right? He can't fill a vessel that's already perfect. So he says to Paul, you should boast about that. You should be aware of your weakness, but Paul also says that he is content that way. And I really think that it's a mark of masculinity when a man is content with who he is, what his skills are, what he can do, and he's also comfortable with the fact that he can't do all things. Some guys want nothing more than to solve the problems of their family. Right? Every time your wife talks to you about something that she has going on in her life, our minds automatically default to, how can I fix that problem? Right? because again, we have a work first mindset, and we feel in that moment like we need to prove ourselves. This is what is going on in a man's mind when a wife or a partner is talking about an issue that she's having. What's happening in a man's mind is he feels he has to prove himself, that he needs to earn her respect, and that he needs to earn her admiration for you. And it is so deeply misunderstandings happen there, because men start giving advice because they think, oh, I have to fix that issue. I've got to prove my worth, why I'm in her life, and show her that I know the answer to that so she can live better. And we misunderstand completely, because she is smart enough to figure out the issue. Like, she knows what the solution is. But you need someone to listen to you, and you need somebody to be emotionally available, and you need someone who you can confide in. And a lot of men feel like they have to prove themselves to their partners about why they deserve respect, not knowing that, respect doesn't come through that, and it doesn't come through your ability to do something or not do something, or have the right advice or not have the right advice. That's not, how respect comes. And again, I'm just saying that a lot of men need to be more comfortable with their weaknesses. I also put down here, how much do we have left? We have a lot, so I'm going to skim over just a little bit of this. I put down here a servanthood mindset is an important part of biblical masculinity. You see this all through the scriptures, no more than, I think, the life of Jesus, as he served even the people that would eventually betray him. And then I put down here as the last one, gentleness. Being slow to anger. Being not this kind of hardened, tough exterior, but having a gentle spirit and a gentle heart where people feel comfortable with you, and your kids feel like they can safely come to you. They don't feel like you're a time bomb waiting to go off at any moment. When you walk in the door, when you get home from work, or when you see your family, that you make the environment you're in better because you are gentle, because you are not somebody of chaos. You are not somebody of, you are not someone who lets their emotions roll over them, but you are defined by your gentleness. And so that's just a couple of things I saw in here. Before I move on, Lindsay, do you have any comments?
I think that gentleness is something that we've gotten away from that is causing a lot of the problems. Okay, do you remember a few years ago the man or bear debate?
Yes. Yeah.
And men were just enraged about so many women picking the bear.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it statistically, how often are people attacked by bears? Mm-hmm. Yet 90% of sexual and physical assault are perpetrated by a man. And that's just what's reported. So, I think getting away from the gentleness aspect is where a lot of the toxicity and just general dangerousness is coming from. Like the slow to anger mindset.
Mm-hmm. I think that's 100% true. Because it's like men are physically stronger than women. That's not a dig at women. That's just the truth, right? We are larger. We have more muscle mass. That's just a physical fact. And it can feel, I understand the whole man bear thing, because I can't imagine how dangerous it feels when you are around a man and you're not sure what he's going to do. Like, especially someone who has unregulated emotions and doesn't know how to control himself, gets angry easy. You know, I can imagine how scary that can be a lot of times, you know, especially around someone who you don't have a bond of trust with. Like, you don't know this person, and so, you know, there's no relational bond there. Yeah. What were you going to say?
It's just, you know a bear's intentions.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know a person's.
Right, exactly. More often than not, a bear's intention is not to hurt you, right?
A bear is to avoid you.
Exactly, exactly. A bear will hurt you if they feel like you are threatening them, right? It's self-defense for the bear. Whereas it's not always that way for men. That's insane how men got mad about that. And I'm like, I understand that completely. Like, that makes sense to me. Anyway. Okay, so I wrote down here how men can move towards that more authentic life. Because we see a different outline in Scripture. We see a lot of healthy patterns there, but how can we actually get there? I think it's funny, I wrote down here a couple of non-biblical examples as well. I'm reading through the Odyssey right now, which is riveting. It's really excellent. It's the first time I've read it. I didn't read it in school. And so it's the first time I've kind of engaged with that text. And just absolutely riveting. And if you've never read the Odyssey before, it's a Greek poem that is about sorrow, honestly, at the end of the day. We think it's about this soldier who's coming home, and it's kind of about that, but it's more so about the exploration of human emotions and the exploration of grief and what men do under difficult circumstances and what women do, how it strains a family, how there are these gray area social situations that we have to work through so many times. And I think for the ancient Greek audience, the Odyssey was kind of a way of making sense of the world that they lived in. And I think that's why it's remained a cornerstone text, probably the most influential text ever outside of, the Bible. But I think manhood in the Odyssey looks like Odysseus mourning for his wife and son because he hasn't seen them for 20 years. And despite what he goes through, that aching and that longing is in his heart. And we see that in the text. And also his mourning for all of his perished comrades. How he so often just kind of breaks down crying and in grief of the things that he's lost and the situations he finds himself in. And it stands out to me because it shows that men don't need to be afraid of the emotions that are that overwhelm us sometimes, including sadness, grief, and loss. In our world today, men really need to learn how to express emotion, because that's not something that comes naturally for a lot of us. I think myself included. And so a text like the Odyssey, I think for an ancient Greek audience, really kind of resonated about how to do that and how it was okay to open up that way. I also wrote down here, because I'm a book nerd, I put down, manliness looks like Sam carrying Frodo up the mountain. Because just like him, we carry the ones we love when they can't go any further. So, if you've never read Lord of the Rings, don't worry about it. Well, you should worry about it, actually. You definitely should. But what stands out to me again about Lord of the Rings is that it's not so much this story about the world that Tolkien created and how impressive it is, although it is impressive. He famously created his own language to be used in that world, that follows rules like it's a real language that people have spoken. But what's impressive to me about the story of Lord of the Rings is absolutely how he writes the people in it. How these characters are so multifaceted and they're layered, and they have these emotional sides to them, especially at the end. Spoilers, at the end of Return of the... If you haven't seen it, it's your fault. I'm sorry. It's been 20 years, man.
More than 20.
More than 20. At the end, when Frodo can't get to the end of his goal of throwing the ring into Mount Doom, and he can't make it any further, and Sam picks him up and carries him. I mean, that makes a grown man cry watching that scene and reading about it. But that is exactly what a man looks like. And Sam is not exactly, your prototypical manly man, right? As you watch The Lord of the Rings, like the whole potatoes thing, and he's just not the typical, like, super buff manly guy. But in that moment, he displays more masculinity in that moment than I think maybe any character does in the entire trilogy, and certainly more masculinity than a lot of men have shown in their real lives. Again, and from a biblical perspective, I think we have so many examples to recall. I think of Jesus and how his life teaches us servanthood, care for others, and the strength to keep going, even when he was confronted with the cross and dying for the sins of the world. How he continued to pursue that goal, how he continued to find the strength to keep going. And what was the strength for him? It was the people that he loved, you and me, the people he was dying for. I think of the disciples and how they teach that men don't need to be perfect, and they don't need to have all of the knowledge, but we just have to be open to learning. We just have to be open to fixing the mistakes and learning and taking that with us into the future for the betterment of ourselves and others. It's okay to make a mistake like they did all the time. Sometimes grave mistakes, large mistakes. But what will we learn? Not letting that mistake define you, but being open to learn, being okay with making a mistake, and then asking, okay, what did I learn from that? Moses teaches men that leading others, whether it be your family, your work, your friends, or in your career, it's not about getting everything right, but about doing the next right thing, right? There's a difference between those two. You don't have to get everything right. You don't have to even make the right decision all the time. But the important thing is keeping at the forefront of your mind, what is the next right thing? Because I think of Moses and how he led those grumbling people through the wilderness for so many years. And he was led on, it's like he was really just ahead of them and what was the knowledge that was available to him, and the places where he was taking them. And I take that away from his life. David teaches that truly the most important thing is the health and the posture of your heart. Again, there's a lot of men that physically work on themselves, but they don't do anything for their spirit. They don't do anything for their heart. They aren't a gentle person. They don't know how to be emotionally available. They don't know how to be vulnerable. And the health and posture of your heart as a man, I think, is the most important thing. It sounds cliche, but it's the truth. Joseph in the book of Genesis, he shows us that real men forgive when they're done wrong. They don't try to get back with something crazier. They don't try to fight fire with fire, like as we said before. But he forgave his brothers when he saw them again after they had done him such horrifying wrong. And I also wrote down here that Solomon shows that the greatest thing we can ask for is wisdom, and our faith, our families, our careers. That if we seek after wisdom, we will absolutely find it. That is a prayer that I think the Lord answers, and he grants every single time. I think if you want a prayer that's going to be answered, ask for wisdom and you will receive it. So Solomon, definitely a gray character. Didn't do everything right, for sure, to say the least. But again, that's the point. He's someone that is lifted up on a pedestal because he was seeking after wisdom, and that's what we remember from him. So not all of these things come easy to us, and in the world we live in, it sometimes is actively discouraged more often than encouraged. And so I think that we can push past the discouragement that we feel from the world around us, and that we can pursue authentic manliness, authentic masculinity in a way that is reminiscent of the scriptures. And I think what's interesting is that you start to follow that and you start to make that a focus in your life, and you will find that everything just starts to kind of fall into place. Nothing's going to ever be perfect, but it's absolutely the way forward that I think a lot of men need. And so I wrote down a few last things here. How our world can support men along this journey. I wrote down 3 things. Number 1, give space to express emotions. Men need to have safety when it comes to talking about their inner world, because again, a lot of them have never done that before, and a lot of them have not experienced that. And so giving space to express emotions, I think, is absolutely critical that our world can support men. I also put down here encouraging introspection and thoughtfulness again. It used to be that introspection and thoughtfulness was considered a worthy trait to have, and it was encouraged in men to be thinkers, to be readers, to be people who sought after knowledge, and that's not the way it is now. And again, your worth is defined by what you can do, not who you are. And I think that our world can encourage that introspection and thoughtfulness in our men. And finally, I put down here, exercise patience and forgiveness for each man who is journeying to a better way of life. No man is going to be pursuing authentic, godly masculinity who feels like he's walking on eggshells, and that the people around him are going to judge him, and that they're going to be short with him, right? So men need to be surrounded by people that have patience for him and have forgiveness. And so I put that down here as just a few things that I think our world could do better to support men as they pursue this. Lindsay, do you have any closing comments? You were just being a tech wizard.
Wizard is far from the term. I was fighting with cameras.
So tech wizard.
So so my brain is distracted. Yeah, I just think overall that it's funny that I don't know where along the way, because I feel like these expectations for men have been put on men by men for the most part. And it's kind of like, at what point did these expectations start presenting themselves? And evidently, it's as we got farther from kind of, I guess, seeking how God would want us to be, and started pursuing how other people would want us to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes down to anybody, man or woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of these negative emotions and habits come from just the anger and frustration of seeking out all of these things that in the end just don't really mean anything, because they're not from God. They're from other people. And it creates that anger and aggression and just dissatisfaction with ourselves and with our lives that lead to these things. So, whatever you want to be, whether that's like just a better man, a better woman, a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, I think that starts with not pursuing what the world would consider those things, because that's just going to end in frustration and ultimately feeling worse about yourself than you started. And instead we should be pursuing what God says about those things, and just pursuing being yourself, not trying to be somebody else. Like, there's as you talked about earlier, there's only one Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
Any man can strive to be as Chuck Norris-y as possible in their pursuit of manliness, but they, like, the most masculine thing you can do is pursue being your best self.
Wow.
Because God only made one you.
It's
so
true.
You're the only one who can be that best you. And that'll make you your best, most fulfilled, most masculine version of you in a biblical, godly way.
Yeah. Wow. And 2 minutes, you just said more, I think, than I talked about in this whole podcast. That was absolutely fantastic. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely great. You know who stands out to me as a perfect example of a man that all men should want to be like? And I was thinking about this last night. Fred Rogers. I mean that sincerely. Like, in complete seriousness.
What an icon.
Like, I could go on and on, but he, to me, is like, he is the example of what every man should strive to be like. Because he's gentle, safe, kind. He knows how to communicate to people in a way that makes them feel valued. And what was his entire life about, right? His entire life was about loving your neighbor. And he understood that being a man means caring for your neighbor. It means caring for and in his words were that your neighbor is anybody who's not you. Anybody who you happen to be around in any particular moment. It means that you care so deeply about that person that that you view them with as much respect and love as you would yourself. And that you touched on that, is a big thing for a lot of men. Lots of guys are not comfortable with the person that they see in the mirror. They do not like that. The individual that is looking at them. They don't like themselves. And a lot of men, I think, who might need to go on this journey for the first time, it starts with asking the question why you dislike yourself so much and where that came from. Who made you feel that way? Who made you think that about yourself? Anyway, amazing words. Super great. Okay, let's pray and we will get out of here. So Lord, thank you for our time doing this podcast today. These are just it's such a rich topic that we could do many different episodes on. And we believe that masculinity comes from you, that it is something that you demonstrate in your word over and over again. And we spend so much time celebrating the females and the women of the Bible, as we rightly should. But you've given us so many examples as well of men who have just demonstrated what it means to live faithfully and honorably in their societies and in their times. And so we just thank you for that. And we pray for every person listening to this, that you would bless them and that they would take something away from this, maybe think about something a little bit different than they did before. And we pray it all in your name. Amen. Amen. Rest in peace to Chuck Norris. Only real ones know. An icon.
Our heckler is here.
Our heckler's here, that's right. She showed up. She's like, Dad, shut up already. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. If you listen to this whole thing, just thanks, because it was mostly me talking, and I don't even like listening to myself for that long. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope you took something away from it. Nutmeg agrees. She does not like listening to me. Have a great couple of weeks. We will see you all next time on The Sifting. Goodbye.